The night was quiet, but inside Chrissy Lampkin's heart, a storm was raging. After years of love, loyalty, and waiting, she never imagined this would be the moment that broke her completely. For over a decade, Chrissy stood by Jim Jones through the fame, the scandals, the promises that never became reality. She was the ride-or-die woman every man dreams of, yet the one who never truly got what she deserved. Tonight, the cameras weren't rolling. There was no crowd, no lights, just two people standing at the edge of something they both built. And now, something that was slowly falling apart. When Jim spoke those final words, Chrissy froze. Her voice trembled, her eyes filled with disbelief. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't angry. He was done. In that silence, you could almost hear her heart break piece by piece. This wasn't a fight. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was the decision she never thought he'd make. And as the news spread, fans couldn't believe it either. Was this truly the end of one of hip-hop's most iconic love stories? Or was there something darker behind Jim's shocking move? Something Chrissy was never meant to know? Tonight, we go deep into the truth behind Chrissy Lampkin's emotional breakdown. And the moment that changed everything, it all began with a feeling. That strange, uneasy silence that creeps in between two people who used to talk about everything love. Life, dreams, even the smallest things that didn't matter. Chrissy Lampkin could feel it in her bones. Something wasn't right. Jim wasn't the same. The man who once filled her nights with laughter and her mornings with hope now felt distant, as if his heart had slowly drifted somewhere else. He was there physically, but emotionally, he had become a ghost. They had built everything together: the shows, the fame, the music, the love that everyone thought would last forever. People admired them, envied them, and believed that if any couple from the hip-hop world could make it, it would be Chrissy and Jim. But behind closed doors, things were different. The cameras never showed the nights Chrissy cried alone, waiting for Jim to come home. They never captured the moments when her heart begged for reassurance. But all she got was silence. It wasn't always like this. There was a time when Jim would move mountains just to see her smile. He would walk into a room and wrap his arms around her like she was the only person in the world who mattered. That love, that warmth, it was real. But somewhere along the line, fame became heavier than love. Jim started spending more time in studios, surrounded by people who fueled his ego but dimmed his soul. And Chrissy, she became the woman waiting in the background of her own story. The woman who had given everything, yet somehow still felt invisible. One evening, Chrissy decided to talk to him. She couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine. She wanted the truth, whatever it was, as the sun dipped behind the skyline of New York. She sat across from Jim in their living room. The air between them was thick, heavy with unspoken words. "Jim," she said softly, her voice trembling, "what's going on with us?" He looked at her, that same look he gave her when he didn't want to answer. "Nothing," he muttered. "You're overthinking again." That word hit her like a blade. Because every time she tried to express her feelings, he dismissed them as drama. But this time, she couldn't let it go. Overthinking. She whispered, her voice breaking. "Jim, we don't talk anymore. You come home, you don't even look at me. I'm not your enemy. I'm your woman." Jim rubbed his hands over his face, exhaling deeply. "It's just a lot right now, Chrissy. The music, the business, the stress. I'm tired." "Tired of what?" she asked. "Tired of me?" That silence, that long aching pause said everything. She could feel the answer in his hesitation even before he spoke. "Maybe I just need space. Space." The word echoed in her mind. Space from what? From the woman who loved him through every storm. From the woman who believed in him before the world did. Chrissy stood up, pacing the room, tears building behind her eyes. "You've had all the space in the world. Jem, I've been giving you space for years while you chase everything else but me." Jim stayed quiet. Maybe he knew she was right. Maybe he just didn't care enough to fight anymore. And that's when it hit her. The man she once thought would never leave her side had already left emotionally. She sat back down, her hands shaking. After everything we've been through, she said softly, you're really gonna let this fall apart. Jim finally looked at her. His eyes, once full of love, now looked tired, detached. Chrissy, he said, I don't know what to say anymore. I'm not happy. The words shattered her like glass. She had feared this moment for years. But hearing it out loud was like a knife through her heart. Her tears finally fell, silent and uncontrollable. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The silence said everything words couldn't. Chrissy looked at the man she had given her life to and realized love alone wasn't enough anymore. As the night grew darker, she walked into their bedroom and stared at the walls covered with pictures of their happier day smiles that now felt like lies. She whispered to herself, maybe love just isn't forever after all. The city lights glowed like memories, bright, distant, untouchable. And deep down, she knew this was only the beginning of the end. Days turned into weeks. But the silence between Chrissy and Jim only grew louder. She tried to keep herself busy, taking long walks through Harlem, visiting old friends, pretending everything was fine. But deep down, she knew the distance wasn't temporary. It was a slow goodbye, one that neither of them wanted to say out loud. Jim had stopped coming home some nights. When he did, his eyes were always somewhere else, lost in another world, another reality. He wasn't cruel. He wasn't angry. He was simply gone. One night, Chrissy sat by the window, staring at the city lights flickering through the glass. The world outside was moving fast, but her world had come to a stop. She heard the front door open. Jim was home. She didn't know whether to run to him or prepare herself for what she had been fearing all along. Jim? She called softly, her voice trembling. He didn't respond right away. He walked in, dropped his keys on the table, and took a deep breath. Something about his face told her this wasn't just another argument waiting to happen. This was something final, Chrissy, he said, his voice low but firm. We need to talk. Her heart sank instantly. Those 4 words had never brought anything good. She stood there, frozen, clutching her hands together. What is it? Jim sat down, unable to look her in the eye. I've been thinking about us, about where we're going. I can't keep pretending everything's fine when it's not. Chrissy's chest tightened. So what are you saying, Jim? Just say it. He hesitated, then spoke the words she'd never thought she'd hear. I think we should take a break. Maybe for good this time. The world stopped. For a moment, the room felt smaller, the air heavy, suffocating. Chrissy took a step back, shaking her head as tears welled up in her eyes. A break. She repeated, her voice breaking. After all these years, that's what you've got for me. A break. Jim stood up. I'm not trying to hurt you, Chrissy. I need to find myself again. Find yourself. She snapped, her pain turning into anger. You've been lost for years, Jim, and I've been right here trying to help you find your way through everything. Don't talk to me about needing space when all I ever did was give you love. Her voice echoed through the room, trembling between rage and heartbreak. Jim stayed quiet, his eyes glistening, not with guilt, but with resignation. Chrissy, I don't know how to love you the way you deserve anymore. Those words hit harder than any argument ever could. She stared at him, the man she had built her world around, and realized he was truly letting go. After everything I sacrificed for you, she whispered, after waiting all these years for you to be ready, this is how it ends. Jim looked down. You deserve happiness, Chrissy. Maybe it's not with me. Her heart shattered. She wanted to scream, to cry, to beg him to stay, but she was too tired. Years of carrying their love had left her exhausted. For a long time, neither of them said another word. The ticking of the clock was the only sound in the room, marking the death of what used to be forever. Finally, Chrissy spoke, her voice hollow. You always said love was loyalty. I guess loyalty doesn't mean forever. Jim turned away, tears forming in his eyes. I never wanted to hurt you, but you did, she whispered. You already did. She walked past him, her heels echoing against the wooden floor, and stopped at the doorway. Whatever you're looking for, Jim, I hope it's worth what you're losing for, Jim. I hope it's worth what you're losing." And with that, she walked out not just from the room, but from the life they had built together. Jim stood there in silence, staring at the empty space she left behind. He had made his decision, but it didn't feel like freedom. It felt like grief. Outside, the city was alive. Sirens, laughter, music in the distance. But inside, everything had gone still. Chrissy got into her car, tears streaming down her face as she drove aimlessly through the streets that once held their memories. Every song on the radio, every light, every corner reminded her of him when she finally stopped. It was outside the same place where they had met years ago, a small lounge in Harlem. She sat there for hours, crying quietly. Wondering how love so strong could turn so fragile, she opened her phone and scrolled through old photos, smiles, laughter, moments that felt like another lifetime. Then she whispered to herself, "He's really gone." That night, she posted a short message on her story. "Sometimes love isn't enough." Fans noticed immediately. Within minutes, social media was flooded with questions, rumors, heartbreak, and disbelief. Was it over? Did Jim really walk away after all these years? People who had rooted for them, who had watched their love unfold on TV, couldn't believe it. The fairy tale they had followed for over a decade was ending, not with a fight, but with silence. And for Chrissy Lampkin, that silence was the loudest pain she had ever known. It had been 3 days since. Jim's words echoed through that quiet room. 3 days since Chrissy walked out of the home that once felt like forever, and yet every second since had felt like a lifetime. She hadn't slept. The nights were long, filled with silence that screamed louder than her thoughts. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw him, the man she loved, standing there telling her he needed space. But the thing about love is, when you give someone your whole heart, you don't get it back in pieces. You lose yourself to Dot by morning. Her phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Blogs, gossip pages, fan accounts, everyone was talking about it. Chrissy and Jim split. After all those years? Did he really leave her? The headlines were relentless. But what hurt most wasn't the noise, it was knowing the story was true. That afternoon, she sat by her vanity, staring at her reflection. Her eyes were swollen, makeup smudged from crying. She whispered to herself, "This isn't how it was supposed to end." Then, almost instinctively, she opened her phone and hit record. For a moment, she just sat there in silence, looking into the camera, no filters, no glam, just raw emotion. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft but steady. "You know, I've loved a man for a very long time. I've given him everything, my time, my loyalty, my heart. And sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes the person you love most becomes a stranger." She paused, wiping away a tear that escaped down her cheek. This isn't about anger or hate. It's about realizing when it's time to let go. And maybe this time I have to choose myself. That video was barely 2 minutes long. But within hours, it was everywhere. Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Hashtag Pray for Chrissy started trending. Fans from around the world poured their hearts out in the comments. "You didn't deserve this. Stay strong, Queen. He'll realize what he lost." Even celebrities started posting messages of support. Everyone had something to say but Jim Jones. He stayed silent. And that silence became its own kind of answer. A few nights later, Chrissy was invited to a small event in New York, her first public appearance since the split. As she stepped out of the car, flashing lights filled the air. Paparazzi shouted her name. "Chrissy, is it true? Did Jim really leave?" She didn't answer. She just smiled a tired, fragile smile and walked inside, holding her head high. Inside, surrounded by familiar faces and industry whispers. She tried to stay composed, but everyone could see it. The pain behind her eyes, the strength she was trying so hard to hold on to. Halfway through the night, she excused herself and went out to the balcony, looking over the city lights. That's when a friend came up beside her, one who had seen it all from the beginning. "Are you okay?" they asked softly. Chrissy took a deep breath. "I don't know. Part of me still hopes he'll call." The other part knows I deserve more." Her friend nodded. "Maybe this is your beginning, not your ending." Chrissy smiled faintly. "Maybe you're right." Later that week, she made another post. This time, not a video, just a few simple words, healing in private. "Thank you for the love." And for the first time in a long time, she logged off completely, away from the cameras. Away from the noise, Chrissy started focusing on herself again. She reconnected with family, started a new business project she'd been putting off, even began filming for a new reality series not about love, but about reinvention. Meanwhile, rumors swirled that Jim was struggling too. He was seen in the studio late at night, eyes tired, music darker than usual. Insiders claimed he'd been avoiding interviews, telling friends he didn't mean for it to end like that. But by then, Chrissy had already accepted the truth. Sometimes love stories don't end because they stop loving each other. They end because one person stops fighting for it. Weeks later, fans were stunned when she appeared on a talk show. The host asked the question everyone was dying to know. "Chrissy, do you still love Jim?" The audience went silent. Cameras zoomed in. Chrissy took a moment, looked down, then smiled softly. "You don't stop loving someone overnight. But love changes. I'll always have love for him. But I finally learned to love myself more." The crowd erupted in applause. It wasn't just a statement, it was a declaration. That night, social media exploded again, but this time, it wasn't sympathy. It was admiration. People praised her for her strength, her honesty, and her courage to walk away with grace. One fan wrote, "She didn't lose him. She found herself," and in that simple sentence, the story of Chrissy Lampkin came full circle. Because after all the heartbreak, the waiting, and the pain, she didn't fall apart. She rose stronger, wiser, and finally free. And there you have it, the story that shook everyone who ever believed in real love. Chrissy Lampkin's tears weren't just heartbreak. They were a reflection of every woman who ever gave her all, only to be left standing alone. But sometimes, endings aren't tragedies. They're transformations. Chrissy didn't just lose Jim. She found her strength. She found her voice. And in that silence, she became something more powerful than love itself. Unbreakable. Now the question everyone's asking is, where does Jim Jones stand in all this? Has he finally realized what he lost? Or is he already moving on, hiding the pain behind that cool facade? And what about 50 Cent's rumored reaction? Is he about to expose the truth behind Jim's decision? Because word on the street is, not everyone believes it was just about space. Some say there's more, something deeper, something darker, so don't go anywhere, family. The story isn't over. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe if you felt Chrissy's pain, because next, we're diving into the real reason behind Jim's shocking decision. And trust me, you won't want to miss what comes next. Drop A in the comments if you've ever been through heartbreak, or if you're ready for the truth that's about to come out. This is just the beginning. This is just the beginning.